Rise of the Tomb Raider unfolds in a valley haunted by echoes of older times. Abandoned structures dot the landscape, while bygone kingdoms lie dormant beneath the ground. Even the current inhabitants, long sheltered from the outside world, still hunt and gather as their ancestors did. And for Lara Croft, a person intent on escaping her past, this is not a comforting place.
Why should we believe you?
But in her pursuit of supernatural artifacts, go here she must. So begins the next adventure for the iconic explorer. In 2013's Tomb Raider reboot, developer Crystal Dynamics thrust Lara into danger against her will, marooning her on a strange island with even stranger secrets. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, she's running headlong into the fray at her own pace, seeking the key to eternal life. If that premise sounds trite, that's understandable. The Holy Grail grants the same power in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Nathan Drake, a more apt and recent counterpart, spent Uncharted 3 hunting for the Fountain of Youth. Yet Rise of the Tomb Raider anchors Lara's story with its own believable characters and emotional weight. Lara refuses to acknowledge her father's death, opting instead to seek the divine source, the object that could stave off death and grief for good. Crystal Dynamics doesn't use magic as a storytelling crutch, though. It injects mystical elements in a way that makes sense within the world they occupy. And on the other hand, as a third-person adventure game, Rise of the Tomb Raider excels. Rather than collide, gameplay and story share the same space, supplementing each other and emerging as a cohesive whole. Like its predecessor, Rise of the Tomb Raider places you in an expansive world filled with soldiers of the shady Trinity organization.
Not getting in that way without being seen. Must be another way.
This isn't a sandbox game, though. Subsequent areas are gated by ability unlocks. You gain certain items to reach new self-contained zones in the story, but can also return to older areas with newfound abilities. By navigating 3 separate skill trees, you can build Lara however you want, as long as it fits your playstyle. The resulting backtracking is rewarding, too. It highlights just how much Lara has improved in the meantime.
A Byzantine war galley. How the hell did it get down here?
There are also more actual tombs this time around. These catacombs are also well worth your time, both for the new abilities they unlock and the design of the platforming puzzles inside. You alter water levels, operate pulleys, and shatter icy barriers, all the while working toward improvements to Lara's climbing, hunting, and fighting skills. They're the kind of puzzles that make you feel smart, as if you've somehow thwarted Crystal Dynamics in the process.
It's a codex.
And in your fight against enemy soldiers and nature itself, you also gather resources for healing salves and special ammunition. When stranded in the wilderness with few supplies and little on her back, Lara relies on nature for survival. Unfortunately, this process becomes tedious after only a short time. It devolves into a constant process of pressing the same button on identical trees and bushes and dead rabbits over and over again. Rise of the Tomb Raider's world is stunning, but I was often too distracted by the repetitive abundance of resources on an otherwise beautiful canvas. But gathering is part of the overall improvement process, and it makes sense in this harsh landscape Lara treks through. And this is where Rise of the Tomb Raider truly shines. Crystal Dynamics erases the barrier between gameplay and story, making an almost seamless experience in the process. Exploration leads to gathering, which leads to crafting, which leads to combat, which leads to new locations. And throughout the game, cutscenes are succinct, but not without substance. They don't belabor the narrative with monologues and grandiose asides, but still manage to build character and establish tone. There's a surprising amount of detail here, too. Lara warms her hands over fires, shivers when the wind picks up, and slides her feet through taller piles of snow. There's enough exposition here to provide meaningful context, but not enough to get in the way of, well, having fun. And when it comes to combat, Rise of the Tomb Raider is superb. The variety of options available in any given firefight is staggering. In fact, these encounters often feel more like puzzles. I opted for stealth when I could, waiting for a lone soldier to stray from the pack before finishing him, or sending arrows into snipers from a distance. Environmental objects aided me as well, as Lara's crafting abilities let her fashion Molotovs and cans of shrapnel at a moment's notice. It's just another way Rise of the Tomb Raider paints Lara as a survivor. She's resourceful. There are slight difficulty spikes late in the game, but if you've explored enough and spent your hard-earned resources on new tools, the fight will be challenging, but not overly so. Rise of the Tomb Raider's first shot pans over a vast, foreboding landscape we'll soon come to know on an intimate level. In many ways, this functions as a promise on the part of Crystal Dynamics that there are big things ahead of us. And at the end of Lara's journey, after we've seen her through this adventure and experienced everything the world has to offer, it's clear that that promise was kept.